audio effects. I got a new. Is this church organ working or not? Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, I gotta turn it up when I do the church organ.
Some dun dun magic or what?
No, we're gonna use the church organ later.
Catholic priests.
Yeah, that's for you, Dave.
Oh no.
Comes on when you speak.
They're in the
Comes on when
news.
you
It can't be
speak.
good.
Forgive me, Father.
Quickly. What have we done?
What will he do?
Can we add some gospel? I mean, gospel music has the opposite
That's the funny thing is there's two. I was just looking around YouTube, and there's two totally different types of church music. There's like the gospel church music, and it's like the stomping and clapping and like the hallelujah music, and then you have like the very European white Anglo church music, and they're two totally different things.
That's for preacher, right? Like preacher. Okay, great. Oh, and then preacher.
So we're going to go through the big top 10 headlines in tech at this very moment, and then we're going to go through the more interesting tweets that everyone's been tweeting. And of course, everyone has a chance to jump up and share their favorites. And anyone's welcome to come up and share a headline from their part of the world, geographically or professionally. Just have something in your bio so we know you're not crazy, like Shane. And then, but then if you want to share it from the audience, you can do that too. You can send it to my personal account on the DMs, which you can see in my bio. That's probably the best way. Or really best is if you tweet it. Tweet it first from your Twitter account and then include our Twitter account, TNATW. That's the best way. And if it's an amazing headline that we should read, and I haven't tweeted your tweet, and then you can DM it to me. That's as a backup. That's kind of how we do it.
Are you actually using DMs now, Tyler?
On my personal Twitter account, yeah. Avoid the tech news around the world DMs because I often miss those. But my personal,
and we don't even bother with the back channel. We don't even do that, right?
Yeah. You know what? Well, Pierre from Club Deck is here on stage, and less than 10 minutes ago, he just gave to me I get to be the beta tester for all of Club Deck's new updates.
Whoa.
And they just added back channel.
Pierre, custom hardware, custom software here. Yeah. Tech news around the world. Get the upgrades and the betas.
Are we on it? Yes, it is. Okay.
We'll flood emojis into your back channel, Tyler. Just make sure it's properly tested.
The back channel is kind of working. I'm learning how to use it right now myself, because it's different in Club Deck than in. Cheryl just sent me a little back channel there. I see it. Yep. Okay. Seems to be working. Pierre just sent one.
Oni? You saw the Oni?
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. Mita yo. Okay. Okay, so let's do the big news headlines at this very moment, shall we? Right off the top, boom, boom. WhatsApp CEO says they had recorded an attack against 1,400 users over a 2-week period in 2019, casting doubts on NSO's defense against Pegasus claims. Will Carthart from WhatsApp claims government officials around the world among 1,400 WhatsApp users targeted in 2019, government officials from around the world. So it says, and this is from The Guardian, I'll tweet this out to the Twitter account shortly, but the first 3 paragraphs say that senior government officials around the world, including individuals in high national security positions who are allies of the U.S., were targeted by governments with NSO group spyware in a 2019 attack against 1,400 WhatsApp users, according to messaging app's chief executive. Will Cathcart disclosed the new details about individuals who are targeted in the attack after revelations this week by the Pegasus process, a collaboration of 17 media organizations which investigated NSO, the Israeli company that sells its powerful surveillance software to government clients around the world. Cathcart said that he saw parallels between the attack against WhatsApp users in 2019, which is now the subject of a lawsuit brought by WhatsApp against NSO, oh boy, and reports about a massive data leak that are at the center of the Pegasus project. The leak contained tens of thousands of phone numbers of individuals who are believed to have been selected as candidates for possible surveillance by clients of NSO, including heads of state such as French President Emmanuel Macron government ministers, diplomats, activists, journalists, human rights defenders, and lawyers. It includes some people whose phones showed infection of or traces of NSO's Pegasus spyware, according to examinations of a sample of the devices conducted by Amnesty International Security Lab. Here's the quote. The reporting matches what we saw in the attack we defeated 2 years ago. It is very consistent with what we were loud about then, Cathcart said in an interview with The Guardian. In addition to the senior government officials, WhatsApp found that journalists and human rights activists were targeted in the 2019 attack against its users. Many of the targets in the WhatsApp case, he said, had no business being under surveillance in any way, shape, or form. This should be a wake-up call for security on the internet. Mobile phones are either safe for everyone or they're not safe for everyone. So he's basically saying, that Pegasus, the people behind Pegasus are not being, this doesn't fit with what they're claiming, because he's seeing a whole bunch of attacks against U.S. allies and 1,400 WhatsApp users. And interesting now that because it seems that WhatsApp, Pegasus claims, well, the more correctly, these articles that we've been reading about Pegasus say that it comes in through your SMS or WhatsApp. And I believe it's probably not both, because that would be two different routes in. That would mean there's two different exploits. I don't think there is. I think there's one exploit. But they intentionally say, there's 10, because they don't want to tell Apple how they're getting in. They don't want to tell Apple, we're getting in through WhatsApp. They don't want to tell Apple, we're getting in through the mail app or the SMS app. So they say, we get in through 10 different ways, right? So that they don't tip their hand and let Apple know how they're getting in. But I believe there's only one way they're getting in, because the idea that they have multiple zero, click install backdoors would be really kind of disturbing. But yeah, they might. But even if they did, the app probably only works through one of them that they're selling to everybody. And then if that one ever got plugged, they would do the other one. And so it's probably coming in through one, which might be WhatsApp, because now we're seeing all of these WhatsApp hacks that they're suffering, which seem to coordinate with this Pegasus stuff. So will be interesting to see. And hopefully when we get the Pegasus CEO in here, Faraz and I have a call with him later today directly, and we're going to do our best to, let him know we're not trying to necessarily make him look bad. We want to give him, we want to do Q&A, open Q&A. We promise to be respectful. And it's very possible that he's getting a bad shake from journalists everywhere. Totally possible. I would love to hear him out. God knows, every time I've seen an article about a friend of mine, it's always wrong. Every time. I don't think I've ever seen an article about a friend of mine that, was claiming interesting stuff that wasn't full of errors. So, it would be interesting to hear him out, because I haven't seen many interviews with the person, other than I think he did one in Israel, which makes sense. But I'm curious why journalists aren't reaching out to him to maybe it's tricky, isn't it? Maybe it's because the journalists themselves were targeted, so they don't want to give him an interview. They're not going to be kind of equal about it. They're not going to give him a clean slate to really hear him out, because they're clearly got a bit of a bias because they were hacked, right? And if your phone was hacked, you're not going to, you probably don't want to give the guy a platform to do an interview, let alone a clean slate to, whatever he wants to say, which I promise we'll do, because, so.
We go in the room with Charles and with Kim.com and Snowden, and they all throw down together. It'll be great.
Yeah. Let's make me. I mean, Charles is in a similar position with him, because Charles gets beat up in the press. I mean, more accurately, Clearview AI gets beat up in the press quite a bit, and then he comes in and says things, and really adds a whole lot of interesting context that is missing from these articles about Clearview. God knows that. So I'm thinking it'll be the same. And you know what, Chris, you just gave me a great idea. I'm going to mention that to him when we have the call with him and be like, Clearview? Well, Charles from Clearview comes in the room, and there's often articles about Clearview, and he jumps in and tells us his side of the story, and it's super helpful. By the way, we have, people like from Facebook, who we hear negative things about Facebook all the time. The journalists are quite fond of saying negative things about Facebook. And then we have somebody from Facebook who comes in, tells us what's going on from their perspective, totally helps us understand what's really going on. And we'd love to, that's the context in which we'd like to invite you. So I think that would be fantastic. And so we'll do it that way, and then we'll see how that goes. But as of right now, looks like the big boss at WhatsApp is challenging some of the narratives that are going on there. And then the second biggest story, here we go, is from Bloomberg. And it says that parking apps in the U.S. have seen a new wave of customers amid a surge in car ownership spurred by people avoiding mass transit and ride sharing due to COVID. And you might even add a complete lack of bicycles available for purchase anywhere. It's like been the best year for bicycle sales in the history of the planet, and there's just not enough of them. And so it's causing car sales, but the car, they're missing the chips, and that's a whole other story. And then the third biggest story of the moment, also from Bloomberg, but being duplicated by Reuters and Forbes, is in a blow to the Edtech sector, China orders tutoring companies teaching the school curriculum to go nonprofit, bans them from IPOs, and raising foreign capital. Specifically interesting. Banning of raising foreign capital. That's interesting.
Ooh.
Yeah, not banning from local capital, but why would you need local capital if you're a nonprofit? But specifically adding, banning from foreign capital is really particularly interesting. And China, the headline from Forbes, these are similar but different articles. China bans for-profit tutoring in reforms aimed at boosting the birth rate is the headline from Forbes. So let's look at that, because that sounds like they are onto some kind of...
Two-child wasn't aggressive enough. They need to add another one to there.
Well, yeah. I mean, how does this fit together with the birth rate? China is banning much of the profit-driven tutoring that has grown around its public education system, according to multiple reports, in an attempt to reduce inequality and lessen a key source of stress for both children and their parents. Part of the strategy to get them to have more kids and reverse a falling birth rate. China is banning for-profit tutoring of core school subjects, including math, science, and history, as well as tutoring on weekends and holidays, and all online tutoring of children younger than 6.
I've got a dark one. Do you think they listen to Gates too much? Where Gates is saying it's okay, we don't have to do eugenics everywhere, because if we educate everyone, then essentially the birth rate falls. Do you think they just went, well, we'll just flip that on its head and go the other way?
Yeah, everyone become farmers again, yeah? Because the vast majority... the weird thing is birth rates decline also when the medical system improves. Because in countries where there's low fetal mortality, people have less kids. Because families, the argument is that families kind of, if they know that their children aren't going to die, young, they have 1 or 2, and that's it. And in places where it's more of a risk having children, and it's not known, you have high rates of infant mortality, they have, 4 kids, because,
this is the prevailing notion.
Right. So, it's an interesting combination that, of course, is difficult to tease out. What are the real kind of key factors that is causing the birth rate decline in more advanced countries? And it seems
Could be the plastics.
And the more there's all kinds of things, and the more advanced they get, the more notable the decline. And is it, as you said, it could be all kinds of things. As you said, it could be plastics. It could be just something about inner city living, that causes people to go. Maybe it's porn. Maybe it's, VR porn becomes even, it's going to get really weird. So anyway.
There's a related article on this.
Okay, go ahead.
Larry Chen, the former school teacher, also like Jack Ma, who became one of the world's richest men, has just lost his billionaire status as China cracks down on its private educational sector. So he lost 17 billion as shares plunged 98% after this crackdown.
Ouch. So
Ouch.
There was a few Chinese edtech companies that were being publicly traded in the New York markets, the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, and they were dropping 60% on Friday. 60% of a stock. That's just brutal. Holy cow. So in the same article, though, it says, because I want to see why they think this is related to the birth rate. It says, because the vast majority of students are tutored outside of school, at least 75% of students are tutored outside of school. No wonder China's kicking ass, man. It's tough going.
I can relate to that, because the reason why they want to turn it to non-profit is because I guess these edtech companies are charging too much. So people are blaming that, the cost of living is so high that I can't have more children. So the government just conveniently say it's because they charge too high.
Right.
That's why the birth rate decreased. So they want it to change to non-profit. What an excuse. Great.
Because of the vast majority, 75% of kids are tutored outside of school. The most recent year of data from the Chinese Society of Education, the country is adding to its public online tutoring and making it free as a substitute for tutoring companies, as a substitute for using these paid tutoring companies, which will presumably be forced to scale back or shut down. And the central government's cabinet provided a guidance to local governments in a document dated July 19th. Xinhua, the state-run news outlet, confirmed the existence of new guidelines in a story on Saturday. Companies that tutor students will have to register as nonprofits and won't be able to raise money or receive investment from foreign companies. Foreign tutors and foreign curriculum will also be banned. So a whole lot of tutors are now looking for work. Maybe look.
Hey, Tyler.
They made external curriculums illegal, like all foreign books that are in that as well. Like, good, wow.
Tyler, I have a question for Cheryl.
Yeah.
Hey, Cheryl, isn't it true that in Singapore also kids take up a lot of outside school tuition because of that big deal exam in the 6th grade or something that determines your future?
Yes, very true. Because there are lots of tiger parents in Singapore too. They want they want the child to start at a at to have an advantage over the rest. But to be honest, this is also causing a lot of social problem, including stress among the young generation. But not to take because of this pandemic, right? Many people cannot go to school during the pandemic. So this have actually expedite the EdTech initiatives in Singapore. So even the governments are pushing it. So I think I've shared this before. So we are definitely moving to EdTech as well to complement the existing education. So, but it has to be work hand in hand with the government, of course.
It's really interesting. So this is all about the ed tech sector in China, but I think that there could be ripple effects across different startup sectors and communities, because what's to stop them from saying, okay, next month it's going to be health tech startups, or ag tech, or just go down the line. So if I were a founder in China, I would be nervous and looking for partners elsewhere to kind of reorganize and establish our company elsewhere.
On the China EdTech news, sorry guys, I just wanted to say that The Economist has been anticipating this move by the Chinese government for at least a month. I've been reading articles about exactly this problem, that education has started to cost too much, and basically predicted exactly what happened.
Wow! Could you please DM me the link to that, please?
Yes, I'll do it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, to be honest, I was in the Chinese room the other day. I told you they actually see it coming since 1 year ago.
Interesting, because
it's been coming for a while.
That doesn't add up in so much as we saw. Or I should say, at least it's confounding in light of the headlines that we saw, where Tencent was investing rather heavily in edtech startups relatively recently.
I was going to say that there's been such a dichotomy on brain drain, and I mean, I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and even the last person that rented my house was the principal of one of the top private schools here, and it's, it's privilege. But what I found fascinating was that he had spent 10 years working with the Chinese, building out an infrastructure to collaboratively bring up Edtech and build it into, as well as immigration into Canada and then into our universities, also down to Stanford and UCLA and the large universities. So I personally, I have a lot of deep respect for my Chinese collaborators and friends, and even those that live across the street from me now. And one or two of the thoughts that comes to my mind is, the Chinese, after living and working there for many years, long time back, but they want to bring up education in their own community in the way they'd like, instead of sort of tiger parenting and pulling it out. So I do think this is a balance act, and they're clearly cutting it and saying we're going to be in charge. So let's see where that grows. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let's get on to the next big headline, shall we? So that was number 3. Oh, I still was trying to fish out what they were going. It says key background: increasing China's birth rate is reportedly one of President Xi Jinping's top priorities, which, as it damn well should be. And again, kudos to China for understanding what the big issues are, like a country's birth rate. And I'm really surprised how many countries are not like reacting as swiftly as China is in this regard. It says, President Xi's top priority, but ending the one-child policy, increasing maternal leave, and creating public announcements to induce young people to have children has not worked. How does one induce young people to have children?
You do pronatalist policies like Russia does, where so when I was a kid with stuff, they sent us to the mega church things where they say kids, you should be abstinent stuff. That was the spiritual camp stuff. When they do in Russia, you go to Putin camps or whatever. They say kids have as much sex as possible. We need to up the birth rate for Mother Russia, kind of thing. Do your part for the country. It's like, wow, this gets a lot more fun over there.
In 2020, China had 12 million new babies, the lowest total since 11.8 million babies were born in 1961. Wow. During a famine in 61. They've gone back to those numbers. Holy cow. China's fertility rate stood at about 1.3 children per woman in 2020, lower than the U.S. rate of 1.6, as well as below the global average of 2.4, and below the 2.1 ratio needed to keep the population from declining over time. In May, President Xi increased the number of children allowed under the law to 3. Xi hopes that reducing the role of tutoring outside school, for which parents in Beijing pay hundreds of thousands of dollars monthly, the Wall Street Journal reported, will make couples feel like having a child or another child is as something they can afford. So that's where the thinking comes from. Interesting. That would be amazing if it all came down to that. That it's really all, and from their perspective at the top, that it's all about the birth rate.
One of the challenges they might have is just, the age of their population who actually has the means to maybe support a second or third child. One of the trends I saw here in the United States, at least in my local area, was that there were lots of IVF and surrogacies that were catering to the older generation of Chinese nationals who were allowed to have their second child, after having their first. So specifically in the Thousand Oaks area where I live, it was kind of like a hub for that type of activity. And I just randomly heard about it driving home one day on the radio. And but yeah, it's common, at least up here, for older couples to